Hi guys, welcome to another week of editing. Now I'm up to week 10 in my weekly photo editing for Asian photographers. This week I'm picking a photographer from India, Gautam Doshi. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Gautam, thanks for sending your work in. So let's have a look at your text. Tethers of identity. What does it mean to be just suspended in time and space in your immovable body, your vessel through life? So I had a brief look at it earlier, your text. So your project is basically about ALS, Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis, which is a neurological disorder. Little to no awareness about ALS, and with this project Tethers of Identity I hope to start a social media page, a website to raise voices of those affected and the caregivers. With little to no government funding, many cannot afford expenses like renting a breathing machine. Apart from an exhibition and book, I see the project becoming a fundraising initiative and a movement, as well as with videos and a documentary. But I'm a photographer at heart, and this photo process is increasingly cathartic to me as well. So you've also included some videos, 2 videos. So let's have a look at your visuals. Okay, bring that up. Let's go full screen. Let's have a look at your video first. Okay. Okay, nice work. I picked your work because I actually liked what you did so far. But as explained in your email, you started this project in December 2019, and you couldn't complete it, you couldn't continue, and had to stop in March because of the COVID crisis. And I think it shows because what I'm seeing now, I like what I'm seeing, but what I'm seeing is merely the beginnings of a project. I don't think you have enough material yet. I don't think you have enough photos. This is not wide enough, and rightly so, because you've only just started, and I think for a project like this to really grow and be nourished, it needs time. It needs a bit more sort of investment, not only from your part, but also from the subjects or the people that are participating in the project with you. But having said that, I do like what I'm seeing, and I like your sensibilities. I like some of your choices, but I think it'll be a disservice to you if I sort of made an edit at this point, because I don't think it's time to edit the work yet. But what I will do is possibly give you some feedback in terms of what I'm feeling or what I feel you could do to move forward, hopefully once the COVID crisis ends. I know in India now it's you guys are having a lot of issues, and there's a lot of things happening in India, especially with the COVID and the social, political sort of situation there. I keep my fingers crossed that in time things will be resolved and you'll be able to continue this project. Okay, so when I look at your photographs, I like what I'm seeing, the photographs you've taken. I like your sensibilities and some of the choices you've made, but I'm also not quite liking what I'm not seeing. Now, what I mean by that is, especially with a project like this, I think sometimes, I'm a photographer as well, and I love the power of the still image and the nuances that it brings. But in the case of this project as well, I think photography, or I'm feeling the limitations of photography, the still image, because essentially a photograph freezes time, and that's when you freeze time, it comes with pros and cons, because when you freeze time, you mull on the moment. But when I look at the subject matter, I kind of want, or I feel that time is an important element in this story of ALS, which is actually not coming through. And when I look at your images, right, it feels like you are subconsciously realizing that as well. For example, this multiple frame here, for me, this might have been better told as a video piece. So if you're a photographer, you might want to reconsider the photograph or this as a series of moving photographs and with video, because I think the nuances of time, of how difficult it is for him to get up or to rise to a certain position, or the caretaker assisting him, a lot of the subtle nuances are lost when you have a video and that sort of reveals, because I think video, there's time and there's also sound. Subconsciously, you are also coming, realizing that one frame is not sufficient. One frozen frame is not sufficient. I mean, fair enough, you could have these sort of shots, right? Which a lot of stories about people suffering from ailments, you'll get a shot like this where it's either a family member or a caretaker, with a patient, but it doesn't specifically describe the nuances of this particular ailment. I'm not an expert in ALS. In actual fact, when I read your synopsis, I Googled and I did a little bit of reading. So I don't know everything about ALS, but I assume that from what I've read, it affects the nervous system, and it affects the body movement, and because the brain doesn't connect with the muscle, and so they have difficulty in controlling their bodies or willing their bodies to do certain physical activity, and breathing as well, which is one of the other sort of symptoms. So I'm not an expert, but I do understand or I have some experience with immobility, because I live with my mother, and she's 80 plus. She's weak and frail and old, and whenever she gets sick, or whether it's a slight fever or a cold, her mental capacity sort of disintegrates, and she is incapable of understanding how her body functions. So for her to get out of bed, to go to the toilet, or to come out to the living room, it takes forever, because we have to lift her up and then talk to her, and then she takes very, very small steps. So very small steps to get out of the bedroom, to go to the toilet, and then do her business in the toilet, and then come out again, and then come and sit in the sofa. So unfortunately, as much as I love the still image and photographs and photography, the nuances of that journey or that difficulty of her getting out of bed and taking, a very long time to walk those few steps in the house, in our small house, from the bedroom to the toilet, and then later from the toilet to the living room to the sofa where she sits. A lot of that nuance or that time, that struggle, that quiet struggle sometimes is lost in the still image, because there's only so much a still image can portray. You overlaid it like that in an aesthetical manner. Now, I like your motivation behind doing this, but for me, I feel like I want to see in real time the sketching of the lines, because I'm assuming it takes a bit of time, and the lines are not so perfect. So the real time recording of them doing the strokes, I think, is even more powerful and more earnest a visualization than something like this. Although I understand your motivation and I sympathize with it, but I feel if we remove this to its bare point, which is documenting the actual stroke in real time, forming perhaps the struggle of it and the time, the duration it takes to draw a line. To me, that might come across a lot more powerful. And likewise for so using that as an example, applying the same sort of method of documenting that the nuances of the struggles that ALS patients, that would be my main suggestion for you, to actually consider that and use that as the central sort of, I think all bodies of work, regardless of what the project is, you can have a lot of different materials, like you mentioned that you'd like to interview, you'd like to do interviews, you'd like to do writing. So I think there's an opportunity for you to collate all types of material, but then, and you mentioned that one of the outputs that you'd like to do is an exhibition. I think the centerpiece of the exhibition could be these documentations of the struggles using video. So thanks, Doshi, for submitting the work. I hope what I suggested is helpful and gives you some sort of encouragement to move forward. And I think you should move forward, because I think it's a nice project, and it looks like you have the right sensibilities. So thanks everyone for following my weekly editing. I hope everyone's staying healthy, coping, surviving, and in good spirits. There's a lot happening in the world today, but I hope everything will be resolved wherever you are. So catch you again next week. Thanks.